this is something that we need to address because, you know, maybe we jumped the gun early talking about the sort of relationship between the Reynas and the Berhalters, excuse me, last month when we were still on campus in studio, because maybe we came away from that saying, you know what, maybe there's not a whole lot to the story after that sort of thing unfolded. And then a lot of stuff just unfolded over the last 2 days. Today is January 4th, Wednesday. On Tuesday, U.S. men's national team head coach Gregg Berhalter issued a statement saying that he had been in a physical altercation with his wife, then girlfriend, 31 years ago when they were freshmen in college. For those who are not familiar with this conflict that is now just blown up, it was something that they had resolved many years ago and something that they had both grown from. Is Greg a mistake he made when he was 18 years old, and one that he still feels ashamed of, but one that he feels that through a lot of work he resolved with his family and has grown from. It was brought back to the attention of the U.S. Soccer Federation on December 11th, the same day that, or sorry, the day after Gregg Berhalter's comments to that Summit Focus Group Leadership Conference in New York City were revealed to have been negative comments about Gio Reyna and an experience that happened at the World Cup in Qatar. And just a day later, it was revealed that the person who brought that up to the U.S. Soccer Federation was, in fact, Danielle Reyna, who is not only Gio Reyna's mother, but also the former college roommate of Gregg Berhalter's wife, Roz. And then you've got the fact that this is something that we mentioned before. Gio Reyna's father, Claudio Reyna, who former U.S. men's national team captain, grew up with Gregg Berhalter. They played youth soccer together, high school soccer together, national team teammates. Both went to the quarterfinals in '02, both big parts of that team. And now we're here, and we don't know how we got here. It's been crazy amounts of drama over the last 2 months. It feels like a soap opera. You remember when the U.S. soccer team was about soccer? Me neither. Because this is now gotten to the point where it's more about the broken bonds of what was once a powerhouse American soccer relationship between two American soccer powerhouse families. That you got to remember, Gregg Berhalter has known Gio Reyna since Gio was a child. And Gio Reyna, Sebastian Berhalter, both of their children are professional soccer players. This is something that you certainly didn't expect to happen. And now that it's blown up in the public, what do we make of it? Where do we go from here? And maybe let's take a look and say, what does this say about U.S. soccer as a whole, that this sort of thing is happening? Where should we start?
Well, I think to understand Danielle Reyna's complaints, you understand that it's, a maternal instinct and, the right to defend your child. I mean, it's no secret that after those statements were made there by Greg at that leadership summit, we all could kind of assume a clear rift in the relationship between, two powerhouse families of American soccer, both on the men's side and the women's side. And, obviously Danielle having such a close relationship with Greg's wife at college, I think that her response, perhaps was to come to Gio's, come on Gio's behalf in a way and say that, Greg made this mistake when he was close to Gio's age, still a young man. And he was able to grow from it. He absolved it. The U.S. Soccer Federation had to have known about it, and we were still okay with that. And maybe she was upset that, having been a person who, had early struggles and, growing up, so to say, even though at no matter what age, assaulting another person, let alone your girlfriend, let alone a woman, isn't something that should be taken lightly. But I think, Danielle Reyna was saying, if he was afforded the opportunity to grow from this and not be absolved of it, because, through Greg's statement, we see that it's still haunting him and, still something he has to live with, but afforded the opportunity to be looked at in a better light, showing that he could grow and that, who he was at 18 doesn't define who he is at 44. I think Danielle Reyna was obviously upset that her young son was thrown in such a negative light and was, pleading her case to the U.S. Soccer Federation. Because again, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes. For all we know, Greg could be meeting with the U.S. Soccer Federation saying, I don't think Gio Reyna is going to be a part of this team moving forward. Not blackballing him per se, but at least making, Gio shortcomings in the camp known to the soccer federation. And so perhaps Danielle knew that, perhaps she was fearing that. We don't have that information, but I think she was trying to go to bat for her son and say, Gregg is a living example of a person that did something really, really awful as a young man, far worse than, being a lousy sport in camp, but was able to grow from it. My son should be afforded the same opportunity. So I think that's at least me trying to enter her psyche. Is it a correct response? No. But I think that's necessary to understand that this wasn't perhaps just a case of a pouty parent who's sad that their, 11U son isn't making a travel team. I think there's layers to that too.
Yeah, I think I agree with most of what you said. In their statement, and I'll read it in a moment. Both Claudio and Danielle wrote to the media to address it before it got out, and both of them said that Gregg's decision not to play Gio into a quote unquote limited role, as it were, when he made that statement originally back before the World Cup even started. But they both the Reynas felt that was a personal decision, and that's why they felt the need to bring this up. However, for me, the timing of this all is what makes it seem more like more backstabby than anything. To bring up someone's an instance of domestic violence in someone else's family from 30 years in the past, something that was seemingly resolved between the parties involved, and to bring it up in front of the public right after you've been upset about the coach's comments about your son. And remember, these are all people who are friends and families. I think that is why a lot of people right now are so shocked about this, and why it seems like the word blackmail has come around a lot. I think Keenan, you're probably right about her intentions with talking to Ernie Stewart and Brian McBride, also former teammates of Claudio and Gregg, who are in administrative roles in U.S. soccer. But that's what it's become, and a lot of people are now comparing it to youth soccer parents, like you just alluded to. No, obviously there's more substance here. It's not just not getting playing time on like the U11 team, but there's a feel to that because of it being right after such comments were made. And that's why a lot of people are now starting to take a look at this and say perhaps the Reynas were certainly in the wrong to have made those comments and to have made them public. And now a lot of people are coming to the consensus that there's not a winner from this, and it would be hard to pinpoint a way to say that there were. So here are Danielle Reyna's exact words. Quote, "To set the record straight, I did call U.S. Soccer Sporting Director Ernie Stewart on December 11th, just after the news broke that Gregg had made negative statements about my son Gio at a leadership conference. I have known Ernie for years and considered him to be a close friend. I wanted to let him know that I was absolutely outraged and devastated that Gio had been put in such a terrible position, and that I felt very personally betrayed by the actions of someone my family had considered a friend for decades. As part of that conversation, I told Ernie that I thought it was especially unfair that Gio, who had apologized for acting immaturely about his playing time, was still being dragged through the mud when Gregg had asked for and received forgiveness for doing something so much worse at the same age. Without going into detail, the statements from yesterday significantly minimized the abuse on the night in question. Rosalind Berhalter was my roommate, teammate, and best friend, and I supported her through the trauma that followed. It took a long time for me to forgive and accept Gregg afterward, but I worked hard to give him grace and ultimately made both of them and their kids a huge part of my family's life. I would have wanted and expected him to give the same grace to Gio. This is why the current situation is so very hurtful and hard." So there you kind of see the personal connection that Danielle Reyna really harped on, and said that there's a betrayal of trust now between the two groups, and not only that, but maybe perhaps a bit of hypocrisy, because what Gregg did was far worse than what Gio did, and perhaps Danielle's also suggesting that Gregg did not give a full account of the details that happened 31 years ago. But for me, I kind of feel like if it was an issue that had been resolved between Gregg Berhalter and Rosalind Berhalter, then why is it coming up now, right after you're upset about what he's saying about your son Gio. Maybe this was something that you wanted to bring to attention in 2019 when he was first hired. If that's really what the issue was, the timing of it all, it just seems to be far too intentionally vindictive. And that's where I sort of see the situation at the moment. Of course, more details will come out, and we're going to look back on this one in 3 weeks and say that maybe we were wrong to have said that. But Keenan, how do you feel?
Yeah, well, I wanted to afford Danielle Reyna, at least a little devil's advocacy, because when you get to the brass tacks of it, and even in her statement too, like, yeah, there's an emotional relationship between your family and the Berhalter family, overcoming that obstacle to trust. Gregg, again, was probably no doubt hard for her. And, having your son cast into this negative light obviously hurts you. But while I still disagree with everything Gregg did at that leadership conference, and, myself alone think, that's warranted, for him to lose his job over that, or not, be offered a new contract. What really bothers me with Daniela's statement about why she did it is because she's making her personal relationship affect how Gregg should do his job, at least in her mind. It seems that she's calling, saying that, hey, Gregg was able to respond from this and grow from this, and I've welcomed him into my family. Why is he treating me, my family, so poorly? When fundamentally Gregg's job is to field the best side he can field. And, we even saw it with the selection, Jordan Pefok's mother's not digging up dirt on Gregg Berhalter and saying, oh, Jordan wasn't in good form, but Gregg, had a history of domestic violence when he was a young man. So I think that's where it really bothers me, is that she's using her personal relationship with the family and with Gregg and his wife, Rosalind, as almost justification to why Gio should receive, preferential treatment. And so it really blurs the line between what's Gregg's responsibility as a professional and, doing his job as the U.S. men's national team coach, and what he, what obligations he has, you might say, to like being a good friend to the Reyna family. So I think all in all, vindictive is the perfect word. I think it's, almost asking for preferential treatment because of your family relationship. And, I don't think Gio needs that because of how talented he is, but I really think that this entire thing, as you said from the jump, James, it's completely destroyed a relationship between, two prominent footballing families in the United States, a coach that, before those comments about Gio Reyna came out, back in December, I think a lot of U.S. soccer fans were hopeful for 2026. A lot of people seemed to be buying in with Gregg leading up to the World Cup. The World Cup kind of cemented that, whether we liked it or not. And now at this point, it's, a lose-lose. And of course, the situation is going to unravel more as more details, get leaked out and teased out. But it's a lose-lose. I think the releasing of that statement by the Reynas, I think them doing it, that phone call Danielle made back in December, I think that just really took away from what was the central issue of Gregg Berhalter throwing a player under the bus, and now has turned it into a family versus family rivalry, which sadly U.S. Soccer Federation, the U.S. men's national team, has to live through because it affects, their current coach for how long we don't know, and, really one of the biggest bright spots moving forward for this national team.